Hey guys, welcome back to Fantasy Tipped. My name is Julian, and this is the Montreal Canadiens episode of my preseason content. This is a series of videos where I talk about a specific team, their lines, and whether I think specific players are fantasy relevant or not, and if they should be drafted at their current ADP. I've already done Vegas, Boston, Chicago, and Detroit. If you want to check out those videos, go ahead. And my channel, very easy to find if you just go to my homepage. There's a whole playlist with those videos. Now this video, guys, is extra fun for me because the Montreal Canadiens are my favorite team. I'm born and raised here in Montreal, so that is the natural team to be cheering for. And also all the history that we have for the Canadiens is just amazing. 24 Stanley Cups and just so many amazing players have played for this organization. So obviously the Habs having struggled recently is sad for the city. However, there's a lot of bright future coming up right ahead. And even this year, they might actually do a lot better than people are expecting. Okay, before we jump into it though, guys, please leave a like if you haven't already. More than half of you guys that watch the channel are not subscribed, so go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss anything that I've got for you guys in the pipeline this preseason. I'm releasing a video pretty much every day, if not every 2 days. It's a lot of videos, guys, so be sure to be subscribed for all the best fantasy content right here on Fantasy Tipped. Let's jump into it now, and let's look at the lines that I would like to see for the Habs next year. Now, these are the lines that I would like to see. Not necessarily lines that are actually going to happen, but it's the lines that I would really love to see. On the top line, Caufield, Suzuki, and newcomer Alex Newhook. On the second line, Slavkovsky, Kirby Dach, and Rafael Harvey-Pinard. To me, these are the 6 guys with the most potential on Montreal, so giving them top 6 time would be perfect. Give them all the opportunities they need to develop and become the stars that they can be. On the third line, I have a veteran line of Dvorak, Monahan, and Anderson, although I do think Dvorak will be traded at some point this year, maybe to the Boston Bruins, because, you know, they're kind of lacking center depth right now. And on the third line, Pezzetta, Evans, and Brendan Gallagher. Let's jump into the players that have fantasy value. And the guy with the highest ADP right now is Cole Caufield with an ADP of 139.5. Now, I think Caufield going that late is an absolute steal. If this guy can stay healthy, he's almost guaranteed to finish as a top 100 player and possibly has the ability to be even a top 50 player if he plays at his maximum potential and plays with good players the entire year. He's pretty much locked into a line with Nick Suzuki, which is already a great center to be playing with, and could be playing with one of Newhook, Dach, Rafael Harvey-Pinard, Josh Anderson on the right wing. So there's definitely some good options for the Montreal Canadiens. I think Cole Caufield is going to have a really nice breakout year this year. And the fact that he's going so late is really a good thing. And I think it's a real steal if you can actually get him that late. Hopefully this year he can stay healthy, because if he does, you're in for a treat, guys. Next I have Nick Suzuki, who was the only Montreal Canadiens player to stay healthy the entire season and play all 82 games. Last year, you got 66 points and 26 goals in those 82 games. Yeah, his shooting percentage was a little bit high last year, okay? I'm acknowledging this. But you also have to understand that the Habs team last year set an NHL record for the most games missed. Everybody on the team but him was hurt. There was no consistency with his line mates at all, and he wasn't playing always with the best line mates. Yeah, for half the season he had Caufield, but for the rest of the season, you know, the line mates weren't really that great. This year, I think if Caufield can stay healthy, that top line should look a lot better, and I think Suzuki can easily hit 70 points, and that's pretty good value for where you're getting him in the draft. The only thing to be wary of is that natural centers, there are a lot of them, especially if Yahoo doesn't change their positions. They're supposed to be editing those positions, but right now there's not a lot of players with dual eligibility, and so there are a lot of natural centers. So Suzuki, if you've already picked a couple of centers before him, it may not be the smartest pick. You know, you don't want to have too many natural centers on your team. So, you know, if you are going to pick Suzuki, just make sure you're not going to be picking too many natural centers. Next, I have Mike Matheson with an ADP of 168.5. And in the half season that he played last year, he got 34 points in 48 games, coupled with 126 shots, which is pretty much 3 shots per game, and then 80 block shots, which is almost 2 blocks per game, and then over a hit per game as well he averaged. And he was actually a plus player, which is crazy considering how bad the Habs were last year. Now, Mike Matheson, if he can do something similar next year and stay healthy, that would be amazing. And he's going to have a decent amount of fantasy value because he's going to be that top power play quarterback as well. And if the Habs can stay healthy, you're in for a treat with Mike Matheson. And as late as he's going in drafts, you cannot go wrong with drafting this guy. This is an absolute steal in my opinion. Maybe the biggest steal of the draft, as long as this guy can stay healthy. Next, I have Kirby Dach, who actually doesn't have an ADP right now, so it means he's going really late and is only owned in 12% of leagues right now. Now, Kirby Dach certainly passed the eye test last year in Montreal. The kid is obviously full of talent. He set a career best with 38 points, which was 12 more points than he had in any other year, despite missing 12 more games than he did in the previous season when he hit his previous career best. Looking at his fantasy point per game pace, he finished somewhere around the 200th best fantasy player. He'll continue to get loads of top 6 and top power play time, and I think he builds upon last season. If he can stay healthy the whole year, he can be a decent pickup late in your draft, especially if he does play on that top line with Suzuki and Caufield. We'll have to keep an eye on the lines in training camp, but I think Kirby Dach is actually going to have a pretty decent year this year, and to grab him super late in your draft, I don't think is a terrible idea. Next, you have Juraj Slavkovsky, who's going at an ADP of 170.8 and is only rostered right now in 11% of leagues. Now, Slavkovsky should not have played in the NHL last year. As of right now, I haven't seen enough from him to say he's worth throwing a draft pick at. Being a Habs fan, though, I'm going to keep a very close eye on him during the preseason, and I'll let you know if I've changed my mind. But right now, I can't recommend drafting him. We're going to really see how he looks in the preseason and what line he's going to be playing on in the preseason. And then I'll have to update you on that if I have anything to say about that. And then I'll update you if my mind has changed at all about him. Next, I have Rafael Harvey-Pinard, who scored 14 goals and 20 points in 34 games. Now, Rafael Harvey-Pinard is someone that I could see legitimately breaking out this year if he gets the right deployment. The kid obviously has a boatload of talent, and while that shooting percentage at 24.1 is obviously unstable, he should still get plenty of top 6 opportunities, so that assist total could go up. On top of this, look at those peripherals, almost 2 hits and 2 blocks per game for a forward, and somehow he was a +7. Sign me up for that. At the moment, he doesn't have an ADP in Yahoo Fantasy, so he's actually not really being drafted. Now, if we see in the Habs preseason lines that they're giving him a shot in the top 6, yeah, I could throw, my last round pick at him, maybe if you're in a super deep league. Otherwise, you might want to be looking very closely at my waiver wire video to see if he's a pickup in the first couple of weeks, because Rafael Harvey-Pinard is only owned in 4% of leagues right now, so he's definitely someone to keep a very close eye on. Next guy I have is Alex Newhook, who I had in my projected lines as the right winger on the top line with Suzuki and Caufield. Maybe that's wishful thinking, but we're going to have to see what the preseason lines actually look like in the Habs preseason. Luckily for us, the preseason starts pretty soon, so we're going to have to see what Martin St. Louis has in store for the Habs lines. Now, Newhook definitely could potentially have some fantasy value this year in Montreal if his deployment is good. But I need to see it before I consider picking him up. So I'm not drafting him, but I might consider picking him up on the waiver wire early on if he is playing with good players and he's playing well. Next I have Josh Anderson, who's currently going at an ADP of 182.2 and is owned in 16% of leagues only. Josh Anderson is realistically, easily, a top 200 player in hits leagues if he can stay healthy. His ceiling isn't overly high, but I think he's a very, very safe pick in the later round of the draft. And oftentimes in the later round of the draft, you do want to take some more risks, but if you do want to make sure you pick someone who's really safe, going to give you a safe floor, going to score a point at least every couple of games, Josh Anderson is that guy for you. Next, I have Sean Monahan, who finished as a top 250 player in hits leagues and a top 200 player in non-hits leagues in terms of points per game. Obviously, he only played 25 games, and he's someone that I would consider grabbing in the late rounds of a draft. If you're in a really, really deep draft, like a 20-team league or something like that, he should get middle 6 minutes in Montreal, and if he can stay healthy, which has been hard for him, so I'm not going to necessarily suggest him, he's a little bit risky. Last year, he was on pace to finish as a top 200 player in non-hits leagues. So in super, super deep leagues, definitely not the worst draft pick in the world if you just want someone who's relatively safe other than the injury risk. Next, I have Samuel Montembeault with an ADP of 184.3, and Monty is their starter this year in my opinion. We kind of saw that shift towards the end of the year last year as Allen started playing really badly, and Sam Montembeault kind of was a little bit more consistent. While he's certainly not the best draft option in the world, he's going to be going incredibly late in drafts. So getting a starting goalie there, especially in points-based leagues where you get points for saves, is honestly not the worst pick in the world. If the Habs are healthier this year, they should do better. And Jake Allen actually has a higher ADP than Sam Montembeault, which doesn't make that much sense to me because I do think Montembeault will be their starter, although I do think Jake Allen may still get a good amount of starts, maybe even half the starts. I do think they're going to be favoritizing Montembeault a little bit, though, this year, so I don't recommend drafting Jake Allen this year. And finally, we have Christian Dvorak, who has no real fantasy value in Montreal other than winning faceoffs. I was never a big fan of the trade when we acquired him, but luckily for him, he might get traded again this year, maybe to the Boston Bruins, as I mentioned earlier in the video, and I'll have to reevaluate his value if he does get traded, but for now, he's a strict avoid for me. And that's it, guys. If you enjoyed the content today, please leave a like and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll catch you in the next episode of Fantasy Tipped.